God's Wisdom for a Fair and Just World by Dr. Jim Richards. Chapter 26. Gathering or Scattering. When the church accepts its position in the world, it will be the most powerful, influential group in existence. Because of ignorance and compromise, it has, for decades, elected those promoting lawlessness, creating racial conflict, destroying the economy, and clearing the pathway for the eventual rise of the Antichrist. We were left on planet Earth to guide, protect, and lead humanity into the knowledge of God. Instead, we have betrayed God and the people we are called to serve. Don't get me wrong, there are great churches and great pastors doing everything possible to save the world. When I use the word, quote, church, end quote, I'm talking about those who call themselves Christian, those who claim to represent God. Maybe it's time to eliminate the word Christian from our vocabulary. If you are not a believer and a disciple, maybe you should redefine your relationship with God. Jesus warned of a time when people would kill his disciples claiming to do God a service. John 16:2-3. He explains the problem. They do not intimately know him or intimately know the Father. Like Job, they will believe they have been fair and righteous while blaming God for what befalls the world. Then there will be a great falling away. The power-hungry deceivers will create the problem, and then they will promise to solve the problem if you re-elect them. This is your opportunity to break the cycle of lies, broken promises, and more deception. You can choose to remove the blinders. All you have to do is compare the plans, strategies, and policies of those in power with biblical justice. Look at what these policies have produced. In America, every city that has been ruled by socialist leaders has shown declines in every quality of life criterion. It's not that confusing. Jesus said, "Know a tree by its fruit. Call it what it is." This book is for every believer in every nation of the world. It's also for every person who doesn't understand why the world is so unfair. American Christians believe that most of our founding fathers were Christian. That probably isn't correct. We think a simple verbal statement identifying someone as a Christian is a standard of excellence. Christian voters were duped over and over again, thinking they were electing Christians, but the problems never got solved. Part of the problem is the fact that God never called us Christians. Outsiders called us Christians. It was more as a criticism than as a compliment. I don't even know what a person means when they call themselves a Christian. It could mean they go to church occasionally, believe in their version of God, or that they were born in America. God called us children, heirs, believers, and disciples. When a person uses this terminology, we can look at how they relate to God, manage their lives, and relate to others to see if their lives bear fruit of their confession. Know the tree by its fruit. We have elected many Christians who were globalists, elitists, and outright pagans. It's time we quit thinking like children. Read the Bible and get to know God personally. Stop following the blind. Our window for stopping the overthrow of the world is closing. Most of the American founders were probably deists. Since we can't know anyone's heart, we violate God's word by judging others. We judge that any person claimed to be a Christian is a disciple, a faithful follower of God, and qualified to lead. Consequently, any candidate claiming to be a Christian usually gets the church's vote. That hasn't worked out very well. Despite the questionable beliefs of our founders, they all agreed with the morals and ethics presented in the Bible. They unanimously agreed that Jesus' morals and ethic would be the foundation of the Republic. God's Word was one of the primary sources for our justice system. They also shared another consensus. When biblical morality was no longer the core value of individual citizens, our nation would destroy itself. They shaped our Constitution to protect us from elitism. We need people in office who understand the real threat and can act in harmony with the Bible, even if they are not Christians. For the believer, an election should never be about the candidate or political party. It is always a referendum for God's justice versus lawlessness. Elections are not a party issue or a personality contest. There are wicked politicians on both sides of the aisle. The only way to know the tree is to look at its fruit. Know the voting record of the person for whom you vote. Make your decision based on harmony with God's morals, ethics, values, and justice. Deal with your own political biases. More than that, together, let's reveal God's justice to the world. Here's a great irony. When Jesus returns, he will rule and reign on earth for 1,000 years. He will show us how wonderful life could have been if we applied his justice. We could have that now if the church would awaken to righteousness and use its godly influence. The system of justice used during Jesus' reigns will be the commandments, i.e., the one system the world and most of the church does not trust. Sadly, after 1,000 years of peace and prosperity, the wicked will attempt another rebellion. Why? They hate righteousness. They are greedy. They want power, but mostly they want to fulfill the lusts of their flesh with absolute exemption from accountability to God. That's what they'll want then, and make no mistake, that's what they want now, a world without God. Too many Christians feel they have the freedom to pick their candidate, vote with their party, or trust their opinions without acknowledging God. It's as almost if we think Jesus was incorrect when he said, quote, "He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters abroad," end quote. Matthew 12:30. When we vote for politicians who reject God's word and wisdom, we are scattering. We are creating the destruction of the world for which most will blame God. Our vote is more about whether we are for or against God than whether we are for or against a particular candidate. This book is for Christians who desire to become disciples, building their lives on the teaching of Jesus. Regardless of what happens next, knowing what you know now will preserve your life. Understanding God's justice will prevent us from making evil alliances, trusting the wrong people, and giving power to the wicked. I know much of this has been challenging. Please don't take my word for any of this. Search the scriptures for yourself. Open your heart fully to God, and together we will create a fair and just world. The end.